Good evening, and welcome to the Wednesday night Bible class of the Boone Church of Christ. Tonight, we're going to spend some time talking about the importance of spiritual preparedness. There is a statistic that we should all be aware of. Maybe you already know it. Maybe you don't know. But the current death rate in the world is 100%. Now, I'm not trying to be flippant about this, but there are a lot of people who seem to be unaware of this fact. They seem to view life on earth as a permanent state. But, statistically speaking, 1.8 people die every second. Listen to the first part of Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 8. None of us can hold back our spirit from departing. None of us has the power to prevent the day of our death. Now, we don't have to sit around and dwell on this. That's not the point. But shouldn't we at least live in an awareness of it? Shouldn't knowing our vulnerability on this earth affect some things in our lives? This knowledge should have an impact on the way that we spend our time. It should definitely factor into our determining what is truly important in life. How might living in awareness of the brevity of life impact our relationships? Is there anybody in our lives that we need to see? Is there someone we should say something to? How will we prepare for eternity? Is there something we need to do? Is there something that we need to stop doing? All of these questions come into play when we reflect on the brevity of life. You know, we all understand the concept of lost opportunities in life, don't we? Haven't we all experienced them? Whether it be financial or maybe some relationship that we've had, perhaps a job opportunity that we've missed out on. There is one ultimately significant category of lost opportunities, though, and that's missed opportunities related to our faith. Isn't it time for us to realize a sense of urgency in this life? When is the time to prepare for the next life? Well, obviously, the time to prepare is now. And Jesus told some parables about this. And one of them is in Matthew chapter 25. We're going to read verses 1 through 13 of Matthew chapter 25. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 bridesmaids who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, 5 of them were wise. The 5 who were foolish didn't take enough olive oil for their lamps, but the other 5 were wise enough to take along extra oil. When the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, they were roused by the shout, "Look, the bridegroom is coming. Come out and meet him." All the bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. Then the 5 foolish ones asked the others, "Please give us some of your oil because our lamps are going out." But the others replied, "We don't have enough for all of us. Go to a shop and buy some for yourselves." But while they were gone to buy oil, the bridegroom came. Then those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was locked. Later, when the other 5 bridesmaids returned, they stood outside calling, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he called back, "Believe me, I don't know you." And listen to the very last phrase of this parable. "So you too must keep watch, for you do not know the day or hour of my return." What is the message in this parable? Let's talk about some of the basics of the parable. Jesus uses a wedding feast as a setting. Here is a little information about the background of a wedding at that time. The groom would prepare a place for his bride. It might be at his own house, or perhaps a place at his father's house. Then he would go to her father's house to get her. There might be a small party at her house, so there was a small delay. Then the bride and groom would return to his father's house for the marriage feast or banquet, which usually lasted about 7 days. The 10 young ladies would be somewhere along the route between the bride's house and the groom's house. They are waiting for the bride and groom to return, and they hope to join the procession and enter with them into the party. If they are with the crowd, then they will be able to slip right in. But if they aren't with the procession, then the doorkeepers will turn them away because they don't know them. They don't have an invitation. The application for us has to do with being prepared. The bridegroom is Christ. His return is known, but the exact timing of his return is unexpected and unknown. The bridesmaids are those who are Jesus' disciples. We have to ask ourselves, did the 10 bridesmaids have anything in common? Well, matter of fact, they did. They actually had quite a lot in common. All of the bridesmaids were invited, and all had accepted the invitation. All of the bridesmaids were also alike in both what they knew as well as what they didn't know. They all knew that the bridegroom was coming, but they didn't know exactly when he was coming. Also, all of the bridesmaids had made initial preparation. They all had brought at least some oil, and all of them became drowsy and fell asleep. So let's just dig right into it. What are the lessons for us in this parable? Well, there is really one main lesson in this parable, and that lesson is that the time to prepare for Christ's return is now. So why is that? Why is now the time? Because Jesus is telling us that there are some things in life that cannot be done. First, we cannot neglect preparation in this life and also be ready at Christ's return. We've already said that there were several things that the 10 bridesmaids had in common. They had all been invited to the wedding feast, and they all had accepted the invitation. They all knew the bridegroom was going to return sometime. They'd all made some initial preparation, and they all had become drowsy and fell asleep. But what was different about the 5 foolish bridesmaids? The one thing that they had done is they had run out of oil. Again, the need for preparation is the main point of the parable. And not just preliminary preparation, because that is certainly necessary, but so is continual preparation. Careful thought is required to prepare and to continue to prepare. And this is true with anything in life. There is a significant lesson for us here. We have to see who these 5 foolish bridesmaids were. They were not ungodly or immoral. They weren't hypocrites or bad people. They were simply just unprepared. We cannot neglect preparation in this life and be ready at Christ's return. Second, we cannot borrow what must be bought. Have you ever read this parable and wondered why the 5 wise bridesmaids couldn't have just shared? Couldn't the 5 wise bridesmaids have given some of their oil to the 5 foolish bridesmaids? Well, we have to remember, the lesson of this parable isn't about selfishness. It's about being prepared. And consistent with that message, Jesus is telling us there are some things in life that just cannot be borrowed. See, the oil in this parable represents spiritual preparation, and you can't borrow that. You cannot borrow someone else's character. Other people can't give you their obedience or their faith. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10. For we must all stand before Christ to be judged. We will each receive whatever we deserve for the good or evil we have done. in this earthly body. Romans 14 and verse 12. Yes, each one of us will give a personal account to God. Each of us will stand before Christ, and there is no one else who can stand in our place. So we cannot neglect to prepare in this life, and we cannot borrow what must be bought. Finally, we cannot get back lost opportunities. Proverbs 27:1. Don't brag about tomorrow, since you don't know what the day will bring. James chapter 4 and verse 14. How do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while, and then it's gone. And once again, we read this earlier, Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and verse 8. None of us can hold back our spirit from departing. None of us has the power to prevent the day of our death. Out of love, God has created us, and He's given us this life to live. What a gift. And in this life, He's given us opportunities to live for Him. And those opportunities are only for this life. So when this life is over, the opportunities are gone, and we cannot get them back. The lesson in this parable is simple and straightforward. Each of us is given a life to live, and we're called to live that life in purity and in faithfulness and stewardship to our Father. Additionally, each of us has been given both the means to prepare and the opportunity to prepare for eternity. So, are we prepared? Are we ready for Christ's return? Some people want to claim preparation, but they don't really want to take the steps to actually be prepared. Others want to prepare, and they intend to prepare, but they don't want to prepare just yet. They want to wait until a more convenient time in their lives, but that is simply called unprepared. The time to prepare isn't tomorrow, but now. So let's make sure that when Christ returns to take us to the feast that He's prepared for us, that we're prepared to go with Him.